So Truman had a world in which everything was controlled for him. And what did that do? That stole, he knew, an essential freedom from him. Did you hear what the director, the creator of a TV show, I love that line, how he sort of hung that for a second, I'm the creator of a TV show. And what he said to him, in here you have nothing to fear. And yet Truman turned and went through that dark door into real life. Something essential had been stolen from him. The basis of freedom as a human being is chance and risk. If there was a director controlling every little thing that happened, we wouldn't be free. If there was a black widow spider in my coat that God put in the sleeve of my coat when I put it on tonight, and I died because that black widow spider bit me, would I be free? Well, yeah, I was free to put the coat on, but God stuck the spider there. Right? Chance and risk, as difficult as they are for human beings to face, are an essential foundation and element for our freedom, for our humanity. This does not mean that God does not relate to the world. As my 15-year-old daughters are growing and maturing, right now I'm with them and I'm teaching them how to drive car. But in about 6 months, they're going to have their driver's license. And I'm not going to be sitting in the car when they drive. I won't be with them in the same way. I'll be able to interact, but I won't be able to be there quite as much. So we do believe that God interacts with the world, influences the world, identifies with the world, and becomes vulnerable within the world. But we do not really believe that God is controlling every little thing. Because if God were to do that, that would, like the director in the Truman Show, steal an essential human characteristic or freedom from us. Now, that still means that it is costly. Doesn't mean it's easy. Douglas John Hall, one of the great theologians of our time, who's often not really known very well yet, we yearn for a God, he says, who sets everything to rights, indeed who prevents wrong from occurring in the first place. But in such longings we overlook the fact that to have such a God, we should have to relinquish our own freedom and become automatons who could only do right. This is not an answer to the problem of evil, why do bad things happen and where is God exactly? But it is a faithful response of many Anglicans, many Episcopalians, and many other Christians. That chance and risk form the basis for freedom, but that God still is interacting. So when my daughters are out driving in 6 months, as they're going through turns, as they're thinking about parking, as they're deciding where to go, and which lane to be in, and how fast to go in, do you know what they're going to be hearing? They're going to be hearing my voice and my wife's voice and the driving instructor's voice telling them, oh, you better slow down here now. Take that corner a little more slowly. When you see a truck swerving like that, just back off. They will be carrying that instruction, that influence with them. But I will no longer be controlling the car in the same way that I used to. Last time I told you the story about my family and how when I was about 5 years old, my mother was diagnosed with MS and how incredibly devastated all of us were. And I told you that for a long time, as many children, I felt responsible for my mother's illness. What I didn't tell you was that in my home congregation and the people in my hometown, some of them did not treat me very well because my mother was ill. They literally walked up to me and told me that my mother had gotten ill because she or my father had done something wrong and that God was punishing her. Now, why did they say that? They said that because they were hoping that if they live the right way, that they won't end up with MS. They were bargaining with God and bargaining with life. And the cost of that bargaining was that they walked up to a very young boy and tried to shame him about his own family, tried to add pain of rejection, pain of guilt on top of the already suffering situation with my mother. Those same people, one of whom died a little while ago, said after the cancer came, "What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong to deserve this?" I would say that as much as we might like a God who controls everything, we want to reject it on the basis of that it would take away our freedom, and that theology also does not serve us well. That person's theology who hurt me as a child hurt him later and took God away from him. In fact, that human desire to have a God who takes care of everything makes us vulnerable to all kinds of stuff. Like old Dr. Shmoo's original Indian snake oil, good for man and beast. I remember occasionally my family doing this, as we once bought a whole year's supply of bee pollen, thinking that it would make my mother more energetic. And you know what? It did. For about a week. And then we had all this bee pollen sitting out in the laundry room we didn't know what to do with. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in his Letters and Papers from Prison, within just a few days of his being killed by the Nazis, after he had resisted the Nazi regime, said, "Humans' religiosity makes us look in our distress to the power of God in the world. The Bible directs us to God's powerlessness and suffering." We want a God that's all-powerful, that can fix everything, even though the math doesn't work, even though it doesn't fit reality very well.